Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Excuse my state of undress while I'm not wearing a tie. And it's because I felt like it this morning. Macro thoughts. Currency futures testing extreme levels reached earlier, and this was yesterday. This is Nanex LLC, whose pictorials are always fantastic for getting a handle on things relatively quickly. And then he also tweeted CME Euro futures having strongest update since at least 2009, a comparison of the last 2,000 days. And have a look at that. And it was a huge move in the euro yesterday, in part, I think, because we had a positive inflation print, and then just because we have a lot of shorts in the market at the moment, and hence that kind of move. Home thoughts, well, let me read what I wrote this morning. Sometimes, like this morning, which was so misty, and Nishad said to me, Ali Khan, look at the moon, and there was this fabulous moon up there and still in the sky at about 6:20 in the morning. And I got to think, 20 years have passed since we met. That's 2 decades. And I looked at her and wondered, where has the time gone? It slipped through our fingers, and today it takes me 48 hours to digest a steak. And when we attend a function, I want to be dropped off at the entrance so I don't have to walk. And Nishat, of course, is an auditor's daughter, and yesterday she tells me, Ali Khan, you know, any entry you make on your phone is duplicated on mine. It's because I gave her my phone, and somehow there's a duplication. And I thought, well, it's felt like that. It was the case for more than 20 years. The point I'm making is that the world keeps spinning. My eldest daughter is off to university, and I kind of want to say, stop the world. And furthermore, actually, whilst we're talking about our wish list, I want my 21-year-old body back because I never appreciated it. And I also want to thank Nishat because she is a damn fine filly. Thank you. Let's go to Tagore, who Leila picked up from my library and thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm so very glad. Death is not extinguishing the light, it is only putting out the lamp because the dawn has come. And this I like a lot. My mother believed this. Everything comes to us that belongs to us if we create the capacity to receive it. That is the complexity, I suppose. New York Times and ABC News reported on Tuesday that Sepp Blatter was being investigated by the FBI and US prosecutors. And that's the point, isn't it? If you're going to accuse all his courtiers, you've got to accuse the emperor, because it's his court or his empire, and that's the point. This was his empire, and he was the emperor, in my view. And then there was somebody tweeted me but saying, Ali Khan, but he was voted in fairly and squarely, which he was. But my point was, a lot of those votes came from Africa. He gave Africa crumbs, when you think about it. Tremendous loyalty, wonderful return on investment, I would have thought. But it was essentially crumbs from the FIFA table. I'll put up a photograph of the beautiful game. I typed in the beautiful game, of course. A very beautiful photograph popped up. And according to Bloomberg, Sepp Blatter exit sparks Qatar stock sell-off on World Cup concern. Ambassador Power tweeted, South Sudan expels UN humanitarian coordinator, just the latest in a series of outrages by Kiir government. I join the UN Security Council's call for a reversal, she said. And I tweeted, what a diabolical disaster. Millions of lives lost, fighting for independence. And now a path of mutually assured destruction is what it seems to me. Beijing, no more Mr. Nice Guy in South China Sea, says the Wall Street Journal, and I concluded by saying, and I've been talking about the pivot to Asia for a while, everyone is set to play hardball, not least because the pivot is bearing its fangs of late. And I see the pivot as the encirclement of China. And if you're parked 12 kilometers off the coast, you certainly are encircling them. The shrinking of its operating theatre and then lighting the tinderbox that is the periphery, Xinjiang in particular, might well morph into China's Afghanistan. If you look at the key elements of the pivot to Asia, it's called the air-sea battle concept. This concept envisages the battle beginning with a blinding attack against Chinese anti-access facilities and incorporates distant blockade operations. I think the pivot is all about the ability to enforce distant blockade operations. I think that's what this is about. That is the point that is being made. This is a photograph of China's Admiral Sun Jingyao chatting with the US Defense Secretary Ash Carter at the Shangri-La Dialogue meeting in Singapore this weekend. Now have a look at this photograph. The Chinese officials at the very top have become extremely clever and adept at projecting power. Have a look at that photograph. Xi Jinping in particular has some phenomenal body language. The Australian government is actively considering conducting its own freedom of navigation exercises near artificial islands built by China in disputed territory. This is the Australian government, according to a report I saw. Now let's go to the markets because we've had a lot going on. Firstly, let's start off with the fact that the dollar got absolutely trashed in a vicious short squeeze yesterday. Euro yields moved higher, and the yields were very supportive of the rally, and then also I think it just feeds off itself. You see the amount of euro shorts in sort of price action like we saw yesterday. Initial catalyst was EU data showing a surprisingly large increase in headline and core inflation, which suggested the European Central Bank's latest easing campaign was gaining traction. And then the 10-year Bund yield backed up 16 basis points to 0.068%, the biggest jump in about 3 years. Spanish, Italian, Portuguese yields hit 2015 highs, and there's a message coming out of the bond market that's quite interesting. Investors got nervous as volatility is back in the European bond markets again. Many players, including hedge funds, are still struggling to recover from sudden and dramatic losses on Eurozone debt suffered since the end of April. They fear that there may be another round of chaos, Xie said. It certainly feels like it could be. The euro is now at 111.33, dollar index is at 96th figure, dollar yen back 124.29. Recall, we printed above 125, I think it was 48 hours ago, and I think we're headed to 125.70. Swiss franc 0.9350, the pound, which was when I walked in at 153.41, is now at 152.76. The Aussie 0.7787. 0.7778, India rupee 63.905, South Korean won 1105.77, the Rial 3.1328, Egyptian pound 763.42, and the Rand beginning to make a move, 1224.98. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. Obviously a very, very big move yesterday, but I think it will be reversed into the non-farm payrolls number. I'll put up a 1-month chart, and it shed 1.5% on Tuesday, biggest one-day drop since July 2013. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 1-month chart of this as well, rose nearly 2.5% against the dollar and hit a more than 1-week high of 1.11950. We're now at 1.1132. Jamie at Reuters said the Bund yield was up 13 basis points, biggest rise of 3 years, euro up 2 big figures through 111, and I'll put up that diagram because it explains a lot. Incredible euro-dollar rally, now up more than 2% among its 10 biggest rallies, ex-Lehman period volatility since launch in 1999. That's extraordinary. and dynamic CME Euro futures liquidity disappeared during the move, and you'll see from this diagram liquidity disappears as it spikes up to just shy of 112. Dollar yen, I'll put up a 1 month chart of that as well. We're now back at 124.28.50. Got as low as 123.75 yesterday, but I think the signal from the dollar yen is it still wants to go higher. Commodity markets, gold was last trading at 1188.99. I'll put up a 1 month chart. I'm not bullish about gold. I think it's going down. Crude oil had another sterling rally. It's very counterintuitive. Got as high as 60.80. Yesterday got as high as 61.50 plus. Now it's 60.80. It's very, very toppy, I'm afraid. OPEC meets this Friday. I can't see them doing anything because it's a Darwinian fight. The Saudis want to rub the noses of all these excess producers into the dirt. OPEC said it wanted to restore market equilibrium with stable prices. That means flooding the market with oil, so oil drops to a level that forces higher cost producers to scale back and ultimately pushing prices back up. And I think the point to note here is if that is their strategy, which it clearly is, or they took an instruction, but I think part instruction, part strategy, then they've got to push their advantage a little bit longer. Producers are cutting back. Look at this diagram from Reuters. Saudi Arabia, of course, is burning through currency reserves, but it still has $686 billion in the bank. We're thinking about Four Seasons Seattle tweeted, simply prepared hamachi crudo from Chef Joe Ritchie. Looked pretty tasty. And then the Ivy. There's a lovely story about the Ivy in Bloomberg. And I like this photograph of the private room, source Paul Winch Furnace, the Ivy. I took Nishat there once many years ago. Listen to the owner saying, he still recalls the night when the late Princess Margaret, younger sister of Queen Elizabeth II, dined on the same night as the novelist Salman Rushdie, the subject of a fatwa by Ayatollah Khomeini requiring his execution. We're not a restaurant for allowing security in, except, for example, when Princess Margaret was alive, Pear says. She would have her armed detectives on one corner table, and then we had armed detectives coming in with Salman Rushdie, and I was going to have to put the detectives next to each other. So I had to stop the second table as they came in and say, look, I have to warn you, the men at the table next to you are going to be armed tonight, and I don't want this to end up in a shootout. That's one of my magic moments. The princess was a regular diner, and one evening had to wait in the bar while her table was prepared. You'll have to go to the article to read the rest of it. Sub-Saharan Africa, Sudan's Bashir says he wants dialogue with the West as new term starts. Listen to what he said. Sudan will seek, God willing, and with an open heart, to continue dialogue with Western countries in order for relations to return to normal, he told Parliament. I will be, God willing, a president for all. There is no difference between those who voted for us and those who didn't, between those who participated and those who boycotted the election, he said. And I concluded by saying, I wonder if anyone is listening. Put up a photograph that Indian Express tweeted of President Omar al-Bashir, sworn in for another 5 years. US urges African states to deliver a message to Burundi on vote. United States urged East African states to send high-level representatives to Burundi to reiterate their opposition to President Pierre Nkurunziza's seeking a third term and press for free and fair elections. State Department spokesman John Kirby said the United States opposed Nkurunziza's decision to run for another term, which was in breach of the Arusha Agreement that brought an end to the country's civil war in 2005. The US encourages high-level visits from Burundi's neighbours to Burundi to reiterate the importance of upholding the Arusha Agreement and ensuring the conditions necessary for free, fair and credible elections. I think he's going to hang in there, don't you? Gunmen attack an airport in eastern Congo, 7 dead. Gunmen attacked the airport in eastern DRC's largest city, Goma, in an overnight raid, in which 4 government soldiers and 3 suspected assailants were killed, local officials said. A Congolese security official involved in the clashes in a Goma-based diplomat said the assailants were Mai fighters, members of one of dozens of armed militias that control large parts of Congo's mineral-rich eastern borderlands. They attacked the depot at the airport. There was a heavy exchange of gunfire. Gulan90 tweeted, DRC Goma bullet shots can still be heard this morning after nighttime clashes. Put up that photograph. And then the South African all-share is up 4.85% so far this year, but it's retreated just over 3,003 points since the 24th of April, when it closed at a record of 55,188. Dollar Rand last trading at 12.24. Egyptian pound last at 763.42. The Egyptian stock market, which has had that strong recent rally, remains down 0.885% this year. The Nigerian all shares up 1.71% so far this year. A bomb blast hit a busy market in Nigeria's city of Maiduguri on Tuesday, killing as many as 50 people. Jeune Afrique tweeted, un attentat suicide fait plusieurs dizaines de morts à Maiduguri, and they put up a photograph from the scene. Swiss Re is in talks for a Nigerian acquisition to tap African growth. We'd like to have more investments in places like Nigeria, Frank O'Neill, Swiss Re's chief executive officer, said Tuesday. The challenge is that valuations are rich. We're looking for the right kind of partners at a price that makes sense. We're at an early stage in talks, but we're positive on the market opportunities. Swiss Re, the world's second largest reinsurer, bought a minority stake in Kenya's Apollo Investments from buyout firm Leapfrog Investments in October. Kenya is one of 7 focus markets in Africa for Zurich-based Swiss Re, while the others include Nigeria, Ghana, Mozambique, and Angola. I like this. Africa is very small in the Swiss Re context, and it is for most big multinationals. But it punches above its weight in terms of how management see the future potential. That's very true. The chairman has told us to show our commitment to Africa. Ghana Stock Exchange, which is at 10.5-month highs, is up 4.688% this year. Walmart makes slow progress navigating Africa's challenges. Very insightful article. Spent $2.4 billion on a stake in Massmart 5 years ago. Said it was buying a gateway to high-growth markets in sub-Saharan Africa. Despite its powerful US backer, South Africa's number 3 retailer, selling everything from food to electronics, has added fewer than 10 stores to the existing 25 outside its home market since 2010, lagging Shoprite, which doubled its outlets to 300. Massmart's slow inroads into the rest of the continent, touted as the next big growth area, highlight the challenges of doing business in Africa, raise questions about Walmart's goal of rapid expansion abroad. Interesting article. Vimal Africa tweeted, who is this nominated central bank governor? This is the appointment of Mr. Gudi, central bank governor. Doctor of Philosophy and Economics from Yale University, advisor to the Deputy Managing Director of the IMF. And I concluded by saying, because it certainly was a left field appointment, no one had this name on any shortlist, I think the IMF is seriously embedded. That's a subtle yet evident message to the markets. Christine Lagarde, of course, was a fabulous guest at Mindspeak. Have a look at that link if you haven't had a chance. She said many things, and what endeared me most to her was the fact that when Hannah asked her, when she gave her the roses, told her, I want to be like you. And she said, work hard and you can be anything you want to be. Which I thought was great. Put up a photograph of her and myself and Hannah when Hannah said that. Somalia's Al-Shabaab enters Kenyan village. This is a report on the BBC. Somalia's militant Islamist group, Al-Shabaab, has entered a remote village in northeastern Kenya, despite the fact that it is only about 15 kilometers from a military base, residents say. Hundreds of people have now fled Warankara, and schools have shut, they said. This is only the second time that Al-Shabaab is known to have occupied territory in Kenya. The Al-Qaeda-linked group has its headquarters in neighbouring Somalia. The BBC Somali Services Mohammed says Al-Shabaab appears to be implementing its threat to take the war to Kenya. Last month it invaded Yumbis town, also in the northeast, before withdrawing without a fight. Look, security is the big Achilles heel, and Al-Shabaab is now on the inside, right? Which seems to be negate the need for a war. I said not too long ago to Bloomberg, corruption has created more holes in our security posture than Swiss cheese has holes. So we need to address this nexus of corruption in security, because this remains the biggest risk to the Kenya Rising story, which it does. Safaricom has rebounded 8.91% since the 27th of May. And the violence of that rebound speaks volumes. If you haven't seen the interview I did with Bob Collymore after his full year results release, please have a look. We've got it up on YouTube and on the front of the website and on Rich Wrap-Ups. Twitter handle LA Frohamain tweeted a photographic love poem for Nairobi. It's on Instagram and it's really lovely. Have a look. Kenya shilling, 19.796. It's rallied very sharply since bouncing off 99 plus with a bit of help from the central bank, of course. But if it can hold around here, it'll calm some nerves. Nairobi all shares up 0.8349% so far this year, has rallied 1.3075% since over the last 3 trading sessions. NSE 20 finally turned higher, rallied 0.63%, still down 5.79% so far this year. And remember, it fell 12.965%. 2nd March through the 29th of May before yesterday's bounce. Nairobi all shares, I said, surged 1.3% yesterday. Equity turnover was sharply behind Friday's session when a big account came and swept everything up. Sasinity surged 6.188%. They're going to sell their Loiter Street property, and people finally getting excited that some of that might filter through to shareholders as a special payout, which I've been saying and others for a very long time, but it seems from the trajectory of Mr. Merali's activities, he's liquidating everything it seems, shareholders might well be in for a good ride here. Kakuzi was the biggest gainer yesterday, up by the daily limit 9.89%, closed at 300, it's up 63.88% this year. Safaricom rallied 4.1% yesterday, closed at 1650. The violence of the rebound speaks volumes. KCB rallied 1.699%, closed at 57.50. Big day, big trade. Equity hasn't really reacted to what I thought was very positive news around the DRC in particular. I think that's very promising. Everready reported first half earnings where first half revenue declined 18.11%. They reported a loss after tax of 12.439 million versus a profit the previous year of 29.412 million. But I think, again, this goes back to Merali. I think, they're again trying to create shareholder value. And they were, in fact, the second company to cite the shilling as being problematic, actually. And they Everready rallied 4.494%, and that's more because shareholders now are tuned in to the fact that Merali appears to be trying to exit and liquidate, and therefore in that action he creates value for himself but also for his shareholders. Once again, thank you for stopping by.